So I've been having fun talking about the Scream movies for the last two videos, and I figured why not get a shirt for the rest of the Scream movies that I'm going to review, as well as wear for Scream Six. Watch it while wearing it during Scream Six. So thought it was pretty cool. I like it so far. Unfortunately, the first time I'm wearing it in a video is when I'm talking about Scream Three. Can't always win, can you? So, Scream 3 was directed by Wes Craven. It was written by Aaron Kruger, and it stars Neve Campbell, David Arquette, and Courtney Cox, who returned for this movie. And once again, a new Ghostface killer emerges. This time, he's killing off the people associated with the upcoming Stab 3. And so, Sydney must confront her past and try to find the killer, while Dewey and Gale try to help the actors in the movie, try to find the killers and just end this whole thing once and for all until there's Scream 4. So, Scream 3, I didn't know too much about it. I knew when I first saw it in 2011 that it was kind of the black sheep of the family, and where the first two movies were really good, and Scream 3 was kind of the one that wasn't so good because Kevin Williamson wasn't writing it. And so I kind of didn't really pay attention to that at the time when I first saw it in 2011. So when I saw it for the first time, I kind of enjoyed it. I enjoyed the in-jokes, I enjoyed the serious tone, I enjoyed most of the performances, and at this time I enjoyed how it wrapped things up. I've watched it again multiple times over the years, and while I still enjoyed it, I didn't enjoy it as much as Scream 1 or 2, or by that time even 4. When I rewatched it for the first time in 2019, my thoughts on the movie quickly changed. A lot of it I don't really like, and I have a lot of thoughts about this movie, and I've been talking a lot lately about how some movies have been improving with a new viewing, like John Wick and Creed, and Scream 2. This movie has the exact opposite. This movie gets worse with each new viewing, and honestly, I may just stop watching it entirely. So, is there anything about this movie I do like? To be fair, there are a few things in this movie that I do like. Well, of the actors, Parker Posey does a really good job of the new character. She plays Jennifer. She's the actress who plays Gale in Stab. And I thought she was really good. I liked her interactions with Gale throughout the movie. I thought she was really funny. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of her stuff was improvised. I thought she was really good in the movie. Neve Campbell of the returning cast, I thought Neve Campbell probably did the best. I really like Sidney Prescott, even though I don't really like her arc. I still think Neve Campbell did a really good job. As far as the other actors go, the other actors who I thought did a good job include Josh Pace. He plays a detective who isn't. He's the detective that isn't Patrick Dempsey. Josh Pace. I wish he was the actual detective in this movie instead of Patrick Dempsey, because at least Josh was kind of funny in this movie. Whereas Patrick Dempsey, I really didn't like his character, which I'll get into. And there are a few fun cameos. Carrie Fisher has a very small cameo, that was really good. Jamie Kennedy returns briefly in this movie, even though obviously in Scream 2 he was killed. I thought it was a really well done, really funny, and actually brought the movie up a little bit for me. There are a lot of in-jokes in this movie that I thought were funny because Scream 2 was such a problematic set where a lot of stuff was just leaking and they had to change the movie a lot. I thought the in-jokes kind of worked throughout this movie. If you kind of look into movie trivia, this movie's really good on that. And I do think there are a lot of really fun moments in this movie. I do like the opening scene with Cotton and how Cotton and his girlfriend are killed, and also the final act, the bloodbath at the mansion. I thought that was really well done. I also kind of like some little small ways they kind of cut around how violent this movie is, which is not very violent, as I'll get into. There's like a scene where there's kind of like where Ghostface first appears and he has the knife where he's like, and he has the knife, and then Cotton's girlfriend just screams. I don't know why. I kind of just like that moment. And also, there's this moment where at the mansion, Jennifer's going down the stairs. You don't see Ghostface, but you just hear the knife come out, and she just screams. Again, I thought that was really funny. Marco Beltrami's score is also really good. It's definitely a lot more serious than his other scores, but I do think it's really well done. And the ending, in parts, I do like mainly how things kind of wrap up. Sydney has kind of moved on, and seems that she's kind of over what is going on, and she's finally ready to move on with her life. I thought that was really well done. Dewey and Gale get engaged, that was pretty nice. That was nice, even though I kind of don't like their interactions in the movie, which I'll get into. So Scream 3 is a movie that, honestly, I hate more and more with each new viewing. And honestly, there was so much I hated. I took so many notes on this about why I just didn't like this movie as much as the other two. And I guess it's not really a surprise. First off, let's talk about Sydney's arc. Her arc in this movie kind of doesn't really make sense when you think about it, because at the end of Scream 2, it seems that she's kind of moving on with her life. She's ready to move on and move forward. And yet, in this new movie, she's in this house by herself. She clearly has a security system. She locks the gate to her house. It also locks the door a lot. And at first I thought, well, that kind of makes sense going through this twice. It would make sense for her to have a security system that was really state of the art. But thinking about it, I feel like Sidney Prescott would not do that. I feel like her, I don't know, at the end of Scream 2, it seemed like she was finally moving on. And so with all the security system, it feels like she was kind of backtracking a bit. So that just didn't really make sense to me. Also, the tones in this movie are just conflicting because this movie was made right after the Columbine tragedy. They had to change a lot from this movie. So one of the things they changed was that it's going to be more comedic than Scream 1 and 2. Honestly, the jokes in Scream 1 and 2 were better than the jokes here, because a lot of the jokes here were not that funny. And also, the movie tries to be the most serious movie. They have a lot of drama with Sydney's mother and how her past kind of collides with this moment. And the tones of this movie just don't really work for me. They just weren't, it just kind of felt odd when they were trying to make a joke and then kind of move on with the serious stuff, and it just felt so uneven as a result. The only person who really made me laugh was Jennifer Jolie in this movie. And like, even though some jokes do work, there were some jokes that just don't make any sense. For instance, Jay and Silent Bob appear in this movie at one point. Yeah, Jason Mewes and Kevin Smith just appear. They just walk by the set and they interact with Gale for a bit. Why? Like, why are they in this movie? It makes no sense. If they're in this movie, then is that whole universe in the Scream universe? If so, it would have been really interesting to see Randy interact with the characters from Clerks. That would have been fun to see. Probably would have been a better movie than Scream 3. So, and also the editing. Again, a lot of this thought this movie was done after Columbine, so they were trying to make it not so bloody and violent. So the way they do it is that they actually cut away from a lot of the kills, and sometimes it just doesn't make any sense. Like there's a scene with Jenny McCarthy. She plays Sarah. She gets killed second in this movie, and her character gets stabbed in the back, even though you don't actually see the knife go into her. She gets stabbed in the back, I think, but then she has blood on her face, and like, how is that even possible? Didn't you stab her in the back? How does she have blood on her face? That makes no sense. Did Ghostface just scratch her like a cat or something? It makes zero sense whatsoever. And on top of that, Dewey and Gale are just idiots in this movie. I hated their characters in this movie. It kind of felt like a rehash of Scream 2, where they were kind of interacting with each other, and they were kind of they were just obnoxious to me. I didn't really like them, and they kind of just kept repeating themselves over and over again. It just didn't work. On top of that, there are not a lot of interesting characters in this movie aside from Jennifer Jolie. The majority of the cast in this movie is just not very interesting. Angelina Tyler, not very interesting, although there's one thing about this movie that they didn't tell you about Angelina Tyler, but the movie doesn't really seem to care. Tyson Fox, Tom Prince, none of them are really that interesting or really get enough screen time for us to really care about the characters. Patrick Warburton's wasted in this movie. How do you waste Patrick Warburton? Come on. Also, Patrick Dempsey. It's clear that this movie... So something I mentioned about Scream 1 and 2 is that those movies did a really good job at trying to hide who the killers were, and it felt like it could have really been anyone. They were really trying to lean into Patrick Dempsey could be the killer in this movie, and it's just kind of obnoxious, and it also just doesn't really make sense when, by the end, it's like, he's not revealed to be the killer, but it's Roman, and it's clearly obvious that they were trying to gun for Patrick Dempsey. Again, maybe they were having a lot of production issues, and they were like, okay, maybe we could make an ending where Patrick Dempsey's the killer. And then they had this ending where Patrick Dempsey and Neve Campbell are together, I guess, and it's confirmed by the directors of Scream 5 that they did marry at one point and had kids. She had more chemistry with Billy, and he tried to kill her. She had more chemistry with Derek in Scream 2. They have no chemistry whatsoever. I didn't like his character. He wasn't that interesting. I just didn't care for him. And it just... Oh, man. I really don't like this movie. I really just don't like this movie. On top of that, a lot of the kills are really ridiculous. Now, again, they don't show a lot of, like, stabbing or anything because, again, they're trying to tone it down a bit. So, like, Tyson, he runs away from the killer after being stabbed off screen. And so when he's running, Ghostface just literally pulls the rug under him. He does a flip and dies. And then Ghostface just throws him off even though he's probably already dead. Why? That's just overkill. On top of that, Tom Prince, his character... Oh, man, this is so stupid watching it again. That when they're in Jennifer's house, they realize Patrick Warburton's been killed, and then the power goes out at Jennifer's house, and then they all run out thinking that the Ghostface killer is going to come out of there, and then they'll go back in to read a fax. Yeah, Ghostface is actually sending messages through a fax machine now. That's how we're toning it down. And so it's like, oh, I'm going to kill one of you. Which one is it going to be? And then they all run outside again. But then Tom goes back in to read the next note. It's like, he grabs his lighter. He's like, I will spare whoever. I'll be I forgot what it was like. But it was, the person who will get off the easiest is the one who smells the gas. And then he just explodes. His whole house just explodes. And everyone just goes toppling down. It's just so ridiculous and so convoluted. Oh my God. And on top of that, there are so many dumb moments in this movie. Even though the final bloodbath in the mansion is really fun, there are a lot of dumb moments in there. Like the mirror with Jennifer, like she's being chased by Ghostface and there's a two-way mirror and she's trying to get Dewey and Gale's attention. And Dewey's like, look, the mirror's moving. Let me shoot it. Oh my God. That was so stupid in my opinion. Also, Ghostface, when he has Gale in the basement, and like she's trying to call him and Dewey has his gun, Ghostface literally throws his knife and hits Dewey with it. That is so goofy. That is so goofy. And not in a fun way. It's so dumb. And also, Gale at one point, when she finds out, like after Sidney stabs Roman multiple times, that's when Dewey and Gale finally come in because, you know, they were so useful in the movie. No. She yells, it was Roman? It was just ridiculous to me. Everything about this movie is just ridiculous, if I'm being honest. But we haven't even gotten to the most ridiculous part of the movie, and that's the voice changer. The voice changer is the dumbest thing. It's literally so dumb. Like, okay, so Roman has the voice changer, and yet he voices like everyone, including Sidney, Dewey, Gale, some random woman that tried to flirt with Cotton Weary. It's so stupid, and yet he can mimic mannerisms and their voice at the same time. And I'm like, how is this technology not more widely known about? How is this even possible? It also doesn't make sense when Roman is revealed to be the killer that he uses the voice changer as himself and then is the Ghostface killer when he's trying to kill Sarah Darling. How is this guy so stupid? He's the mastermind behind this whole thing, as we find out. And it's so stupid. Like how are you this stupid? Roman is one of my least favorite killers in the entire trilogy, if I'm being honest. It's so stupid. Let's talk about Roman as the killer. Yeah, I hated him. I really hated him. For a lot of reasons. One, he's pretty much a solo act, which kind of takes away a lot of the suspense of the first two movies. And even though it's kind of implied that Angelina Tyler may be the second killer, she's killed off screen by Roman at one point, and it just doesn't make any sense. Also, at one point, he actually fakes his death to kind of make people think, oh, it's not actually me, maybe someone else. So, like, he goes in the basement, he sees the coffin, and then the next thing we know, he's in there with blood and a knife stabbed into him. And then, like, Gale and Jennifer see, and they run upstairs. So, in that time between when Gale and Jennifer run upstairs to meet Angelina, Roman got out of the coffin, actually wiped the blood off him, took the knife off, and then got into his Ghostface costume and ran upstairs to kill Jennifer. How? How? Just how? It's so stupid. On top of that, the other reason why Roman is not that great of a killer is that at no point in the movie does he actually meet Sidney beforehand. Until, he unmasks himself as the killer. At least in Scream 1, she knew who Billy and Stu were. At least in Scream 2, she knew who Mickey and Mrs. Loomis were. Even in Scream 4, Jill is her cousin, and Charlie is someone that she met while she was visiting Woodsboro. They had never met prior, and that is weird. And some would say, and then you may say, oh, in Scream 5, she never met the killers either. Well, Scream 5 is kind of an exception to the rule because it's not really about Sidney at this point. It's more about Sam. So I kind of let Scream 5 go with that. But Scream 3, no, it just doesn't work. It just really doesn't work. It was just so over the top. And Ghostface, he's way too superhuman. Yeah, I know that Brady mentioned, oh, you gotta kill this guy, like, in the craziest way possible. You gotta chronologically freeze his head or something like that. He's way too superhuman. He moves way too fast. The whole voice changer thing, so much of it just does not make any sense whatsoever. And I just didn't care for it. And meta commentary in this movie feels so half-baked because, again, they were trying to film this movie right after Columbine, so they had to change a lot of things. Mainly change the plot, mainly change the finale. And also, they kind of add this whole thing about how violence is a big deal, and they were told that they had to tone down the violence. And it's like, just because you mention that you're doing something doesn't really make it funny. It just kind of feels lazy at times. And it just didn't work for me. The commentaries in the first two Scream movies I thought were better than Scream 3. And on top of that, let's talk about the last subplot in this movie, and that is the subplot about Hollywood producers, because it is discovered that Sydney's mother was an actress in Hollywood for a bit, and she unfortunately was abused by a bunch of powerful men in the industry, and that's how Roman was born. And then when Roman tried to find her again, she had a new name, a new life, and everything. And it's a really horrible thing that they did to her. It's honestly really disgusting. They pretty much slut shamed her. I hate using that phrase, but it's true. They made it. What they did to Maureen is just so dirty and disgusting. And on top of that, this whole storyline about how Hollywood producers abuse women is sickening. And unfortunately, it has happened. But what makes it even worse is that Harvey Weinstein helped produce these movies. That is really disgusting. Like this movie that's like, Hollywood producers abuse a bunch of innocent women and all that, and you say how terrible it is, and yet for years Harvey Weinstein was doing all that shit, and people just kind of didn't do anything about it. And it's honestly disgusting that this movie just kind of waved it in our faces and was like, yeah, they're basically saying, yeah, we're doing this, and there's nothing you can really do about it. That's sick. That is disgusting. Honestly, that was the thing in 2019 that made me angry at this movie. Just how it basically just showed it all off and was just like, we didn't really pay attention to it, did we? It's sick. It's gross. I really don't like Scream 3 for a lot of reasons. It's not as fun as the other two. It's tonally inconsistent. The characters aren't that great. The jokes aren't that great. So many stupid moments. So many disgusting moments. Again, some of the problems with this movie aren't necessarily the fault of the filmmakers, but they are the fault of the environment that we were in, like how edited they were, how toned down the movie was pretty much. But there are things that this movie could help. They didn't need to do horrible things to Maureen. They didn't need to do all these really disgusting things and basically kind of just wave in our face that they were doing it and they were okay with it. It was not a good movie. Even though there are some good performances and some fun scenes and the score is really good, Scream 3 is kind of a disaster. It's enjoyable at times for some of the performances, particularly Jennifer Jolie, but Scream 3, it's not good. It's really not good. Because it does have a watchability factor, it has a watchability factor until the very end of the movie. Like the whole scene with Roman and Sydney at the very end, yeah, that was just terrible. That was just awful. It was dumb, it wasn't interesting, it wasn't fun, it was just gross, and it's watchable. But there's a lot of things about this movie that I can't. I just really can't. No, I'm taking it back. I've already ranted so long about this, it's not really watchable. I'll give Scream 3 1 out of 4 stars. Skip it. So, have you ever seen a movie that you liked, but then as you grew up you hated it? I'm really curious. Comment down below, subscribe to the channel. This is Pat. Stay safe.